I've gotten the official report from yesterday. There were, what is it, Jared, 240 hits live streaming? Sounds kind of subversive, 240 hits. Yeah, that means there were 240 separate computers or terminals that were clued into our service. And you know, you don't know how many people were at each site. Could have been 1,000 people altogether. It's really... Could have been 10,000 people. The whole world is watching. Okay. The year I graduated from rabbinical school, the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, and officially became a young rabbi on that day, a new book appeared on the scene. And it was the topic of my Yom Kippur sermon that year. The author of that new book was Rabbi Harold Kushner, and Rabbi Kushner was our graduation speaker that June. Rabbi Kushner's book, which I imagine most of you have read, maybe some recently, but some many years ago, became an all-time bestseller, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. Rabbi Kushner addresses one of the most disturbing existential questions. Why is it that bad things happen to good people? There is no question that I have been asked this question more than any other question over the years. And this question troubles me personally. And when I'm asked this question, it's never asked as a general philosophical question. Rabbi, let's just schmooze about this question. It's always asked out of the context of pain and hurt and suffering. Someone is going through something that hurts so much, and someone says to me, Rabbi, why is it that bad things happen to good people? And I would imagine that if we each had an opportunity to share the time or times when we asked this question, each one of us asked this question, that we could be here from today to Yom Kippur. We have somehow internalized a formula that says, if we are a good, decent person, then good things will happen to us. And we'll be almost immunized against bad things happening to us. And you know, we didn't make this up ourselves. The Torah itself expresses this view. And Rabbi Kushner, by all accounts, was and is a good and decent man, a Bible scholar, a rabbi who faithfully served his congregation. He and his wife were blessed with a gift of new life, as Abraham and Sarah were yesterday. But Rabbi Kushner and his wife soon found that their son Aaron was a most unusual little boy. They soon became aware of the fact that their little boy Aaron suffered from a syndrome known as progeria. The little boy so very quickly, more and more, looked like an old, frail man. That was captured in a way in the 2008 movie, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Did you see that movie? It's a fine movie. But Benjamin grows younger as the years go on, right? Aaron never grew younger. He almost never grew. And so at his bar mitzvah, Aaron looked like a frail old man. And he lived only another year after that. So over the years, Rabbi Kushner has written a number of books, each one filled with much wisdom. And his newest book, that just came out this past year, is a wonderful commentary on the book of Job. You know Job? Job is a personality in the Bible. There's a whole book devoted to him. Sefer Eov, the book of Job. Job, more than any other person in the Bible, suffers terribly. And so Rabbi Kushner now returns to his original theme. He writes on the book of Job, and the book is subtitled, When Bad Things Happen to a Good Person. And I started reading the book this past spring. Was getting a lot out of the book. And then one Shabbat afternoon, I went to pick the book up, and I saw what the title of the book was. But somehow something else leapt up at me. Instead of seeing the words, when bad things happen to a good person, what I kind of felt at that moment was, when good things happen to a good person. When good things happen to an ordinary person. And so I asked the question to myself, why did I see those words, when good things happen? And in the best of Jewish tradition, let me answer the question with a question. It's my question. It's a question that I want to pose to you this morning. Here's my question to you. In the course of a day, a week, a month, you experience all kinds of emotions. Isn't that the case? You feel all kinds of different emotions. But what I want to ask you this morning, is there one emotion that you find yourself experiencing, feeling more than any other emotion? Is there one emotion in particular that stands out for you? Your own emotion, something that you're feeling. Let me ask a different question. It's really the same question asked maybe a little differently. If you were going to describe yourself in the word of an emotion, how would you describe yourself? Would you call yourself anger? Would you call yourself happiness? Are you sadness? Are you Miss Joy, Mr. Depression? Would you use the word contentment to describe yourself? Resentment? Maybe love, maybe compassion. Who are you? What is the one emotion that more than any other emotion describes who you are? I'm asking you because I have my word. I'm not sure this is an emotion, but my word is, I more than anything else feel grateful. I feel so grateful. I feel so grateful. Look, I, like you, experience all kinds of different emotions. Sometimes in the course of a day, it's like a roller coaster. But with all those emotions going on, all that we experience in life, I feel more than anything else these days, I feel grateful. Grateful the most. And for sure, not everything is good, but I am grateful for the good things that happen to me. Dear friends, I am so grateful for you, and I am so grateful to you. You give meaning to my life. You know, the name Rick Warren is the nationally known founder and senior pastor of a mega church in Lake Forest, California, Saddleback Church. I'm sure you've seen him on TV. He's known nationally. And like Rabbi Kushner, he and his wife suffered the loss of a child this past year. They lost their son in his 20s to suicide. And it took the pastor some months before he could return to his pulpit. But some years ago, Rick Warren wrote a book that may even have outsold Rabbi Kushner's book. The book is called The Purpose-Driven Life. The Purpose-Driven Life. Life is lived best when you have a purpose in your life, and you pursue that purpose. Think about it. I asked you, what emotion are you? Can you point to your own purpose in life? And are you pursuing your purpose? For the past 37 years, my central purpose has been our synagogue. And for the past 15 years, and growing greater each year and each day, my purpose is to be a good husband to Janie. A good day in my book is a strong day for Janie, time that we have to share together, sharing some joy, sharing some laughter, which we do a lot, and feeling that I served our community well and in some meaningful way. My formula for life is fairly simple and deeply meaningful and satisfying to me. And when that works, I feel grateful. I am grateful oddly enough, every time we see Janie's neurologist. It is the nature of her practice that most of her patients who she sees every 6 months appear more compromised and more frail. But she repeatedly remarks how Janie looks better and tests to be stronger since the previous visit 6 months ago, and especially since we began seeing her some 4 years ago. And so I am deeply grateful. 2 years ago, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, I told you that I was undergoing treatment for hepatitis C. And you could see easily how I was laboring throughout that season. So I was undergoing treatment at that time. I had undergone a similar treatment twice in the previous 15 years. Both had ultimately proved unsuccessful. So the treatment at that time started in July of 2011 and it went through June of 2012. And that treatment was significantly more debilitating than the 2 previous treatments. And the first 3 months were the hardest and the most difficult, and they encompassed the High Holy Days. So the treatment ended in June last year. So it ended in June, 2012. And in a few weeks, I began feeling stronger. And along with that, almost euphoric. You know, anyone who has felt and been in real pain, when the pain goes away, sometimes it's because of the narcotic that you're taking, but when the pain goes away, you can feel a tremendous sense of euphoria. And really through the whole summer, last summer, I was just feeling as happy as could be. It was one of the greatest summers. And I was supposed to have a test done that would be the 3-month test after treatment. And 3 months after treatment was just before the High Holy Days. So I was so happy, I was so joyful being off of the treatment. I didn't want to take the test right before the High Holy Days, because if the test came back bad, I didn't want to walk here or ungablizm before you on that day. I wanted to be happy, so I figured, you know what, it can wait a couple of weeks. I'll take the test after the High Holy Days. I took the test, and the results came back that there was no evidence of the virus. But the real test happened 6 months after. See, if you're no evidence 3 months, well, that's a good sign. But the real test is 6 months after. So it's 6 months after the treatment. So I had the next test in December. And after that test in December, I get a call on my cell phone from the doctor. You know, the doctor seldom calls, right? You know, the nurse calls, the receptionist calls, you know that your appointment is on such and such a date, don't forget, bring your insurance card, you know the whole deal, right? Come 50 minutes early, he'll be late, but you come early. Now, the doctor called himself because with so much, I could just hear it, so much enthusiasm in his voice, he said, "Elliot, you are cured." And in a recent test this summer, it proved exactly the same. And so I am very grateful. Let me tell you something else that I'm very grateful for, which may sound a little bit odd coming from the rabbi on this spiritual day. But oddly enough, I am grateful for our home in Ivy Land. What am I talking about? I'll tell you that this is a relatively new feeling, though we've been living in it for the past 14 years. And I've always just taken our home for granted. You know, that's where we live. I have to make sure that the lawn is mowed and, you know, the snow has to be removed in the winter and all the things that you have to do with your home. Never really felt so grateful. It's where we live. But recently when Oliver, you know, our little precious dog Oliver, you've heard about him before. Many of you have come to know him personally. You are gifted to have that relationship with him. When Oliver and I walk around our house together, I just feel so very thankful for it. And yes, Janie and I are so grateful for our little precious cockapoo, Oliver. Though, as I've mentioned before, he is a kindergarten dropout. He is absolutely the sweetest dog there is. And in spite of that initial academic experience of failure, Oliver's turned out to be a pretty bright guy too. Pretty smart. And he brings Janie and myself a daily dosage of happiness. And when we're away, he brings Paula a daily dosage of happiness. Any of you who live in Deerfield North always tell me, we saw Oliver taking a walk. And sometimes Paula brings him to the office. So many of you have met Oliver here. So, well, here's why I feel grateful for our house. For the past 4 years, Janie and I set up shop in the rather small living room on the main floor of our home. And so we were living in rather tight quarters. So maybe a year ago, Janie and I were discussing how we should go forward. Should we move into a one-story house where everything is on one floor? Because we were just feeling so hemmed in. Or should we build an elevator? And we ultimately decided that it would be a lot less disruptive to install an elevator than to get up and pack up and everything that's involved in moving. It was the last thing that we needed to do. So we built a small addition onto the house, and the elevator was installed in February, and Janie saw our bedroom for the first time in 4 years. Yeah. When I spoke about disabilities and different abilities last year, I spoke about the victories in overcoming limitations. Last summer, as I shared with you, was making it to the beach for the first time in about 5 years on this beach buggy that we were able to rent. And that was a great victory. And that victory with the elevator is at the heart of my seeing on the cover of the book, When Good Things Happen to Ordinary People. Maybe good people, but ordinary people. I have to tell you something else that happened with this elevator. So this past March, Janie and I hosted a gathering of preschool and kindergarten kids and families that they were invited to our house. So I had 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds, right? So my job was to welcome all the kids. We were going to have a snack together, and then I was going to hang out with the parents, and the kids were going to go downstairs, and they were going to play all kinds of fun games with the person who was going to play all kinds of fun games with them, until the person who was going to play all kinds of fun games with them called me and said she's stuck in New Jersey and she's going to be 45 minutes late. And I started catastrophizing. Now what do I do? This is going to be like one of the worst memories these kids will ever have. And they'll tell all their friends that weren't there, yeah, we went to the rabbi's house. It was so boring, it was unbelievable. Anyhow, so I'm like not quite sure what to do, and 2 little kids come over to me, Brent and Michael, and Brent says to me, he says, Rabbi, Michael has a question to ask you. But Michael doesn't want to ask the question. So I said, okay, well, Michael, then you ask the question. So very hesitatingly, he says, Rabbi, He says, "Can we take a ride on your elevator?" You know, I didn't even think about this happening. And had I thought about it, that was probably one of the last things I would have wanted to happen that day. I said, "Great, Michael and Brent, we're going on the elevator." So, you know, we're on the main floor. We went down to the floor below it, and they loved it. And then I said to them, "You know what, let's do something really fun now. We're going to do 2 floors at one time." And then we go up 2 floors. Well, all the other kids heard about this. They want to take a ride on the elevator too. So we go up to it opens up into a bedroom, not our bedroom, but it opens up into a bedroom. And so they all come up to the top floor, and they get out of the elevator, and they see the queen-size bed in front of them. And you know what 4- and 5-year-olds do when they see a queen-size bed in front of them? They start jumping on the bed. I could not ever imagine how joyful I would be seeing 4- and 5-year-olds jumping on a bed in my house. And then the following week, when I was with the kids on a Friday morning, one of the kids who was at my house that day, he came over to me and he said, "Rabbi, when's the next party at your house?" And you know what amazes me? You know, how many of these kids have been to Sesame Place? You know, I don't know, all kinds of places, right? And they find an elevator to be like, really, wow. So I am deeply grateful for the elevator that saved me that day. You know, there's a field of psychology known as positive psychology. Positive psychology that deals not with what psychology would normally deal with, our symptoms, our neuroses, our pains, our fears, our phobias, but it deals with the healthy, positive, optimistic aspects of life. And those in the field of positive psychology, they talk about developing within ourselves a feeling of gratitude. Because gratitude, they've learned by their empirical tests, is at the core of feeling happy, of feeling upbeat. When you feel grateful, you feel good. But you know what? It's natural for me, and I guess it's natural for you. It's natural that we take the good things in life for granted, don't we? We don't dwell on them. But then something bad happens, and boy, it's got our attention. And it seems like life is only bad. And then we can't help but ask. We can't help but ask. I ask, why do bad things happen to good people? But we're advised to not take these good things for granted and to focus on them and to be aware of them. Look, and also we sometimes look at those who seemingly have so much more than us. Look at them. They have so much more than I do. How can I possibly be happy? How can I possibly be grateful? But you know what? We would do well sometimes to look at those who have so much less than us. If we can, reach out and help them. But there's so much we can learn from them and be grateful for what we have. How many of you saw the movie, The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel? Yeah, maybe about a third of you. I think the third who saw it, don't you recommend it to the other 2/3? Yeah. It's a British movie. It's the story of a group of British seniors who go to India to retire at this hotel in India, which on the internet is the most glorious place until you got there and you saw it. We had an experience like this about 11 years ago. We decided at the very last minute we wanted to take a winter vacation someplace where it was warm, and I started calling some travel agencies, and they actually started laughing at me that there was nothing, absolutely nothing available. So I said to myself, I'm going to do this on my own. So I went onto the internet, and I found this absolutely gorgeous hotel. I never saw anything this beautiful in St. Martin. And so we all went to St. Martin. And then we got out of the cab. And then we saw what this hotel really looked like. You know, so it wasn't exactly the same. So I kind of like empathized with these people who got to the best exotic Marigold hotel. But in spite of that, Janie, didn't we have a great time? We had a great time. And actually, the people there were so kind to us because at every meal, whatever they were serving, the chef made a special effort. They were really so kind to make some kind of fish for us or vegetables, something that we could eat. And it really turned out to be a very sweet week. Anyhow, most of the pensioners come to terms with it. But this one woman, Muriel, played by Maggie Smith, she lived her whole life being miserable and racist of any person of color, but absolutely miserable. Okay. She came to India to have surgery, hip surgery, which was less expensive than what she would have had back at home, and it would happen in a faster period of time. She spent most days sitting alone. She didn't have anything to do with the other pensioners. She sat alone, but would exchange a few words with a young cleaning girl. This young cleaning girl went through life with nobody talking to her. Nobody talking to her, nobody even looking her way, because she must have been in one of the lowest castes. Like she must have been an untouchable. She must have been an untouchable. So here, this one woman who was miserable to everyone else, she would exchange a few words. And this untouchable came to develop a fondness for her. And she invited her to her home. Well, the last thing that this woman wanted to do was to go to her home, but she also didn't want to embarrass her. So she goes with one of the aides at the hotel. She goes to visit this young lady, the cleaning lady at home. And she finds out that she lives in a shack of a house. It's like nothing, like nothing. And the whole neighborhood came out to see her. And they were all sitting there. Those of you who saw the movie, right? Am I getting it right? They're all sitting there smiling with the biggest smile that they could possibly have. And she can't get it. They're living in a slum of a slum. And they're all sitting there as happy as they could possibly be. And you know, I've heard this story again and again. People that have gone to South America, Central America, to Haiti, they meet people who have, in our estimation, they have absolutely nothing. But somehow in their world, they don't have things, but they have so much. And they were all smiling. And she asked the person, why are they smiling? And she said to them, because they feel grateful for what they do have. They feel grateful for what they do have. And dear friends, we can learn much from them. I want to say this, and this is the hardest thing to relate to. Because I think, in a way, this doesn't make any sense, but I promise you it does. When you read the literature on feeling grateful and gratitude, you will come across the idea of feeling grateful even for life's challenges, even for life's hurts, even for life's disappointments. And you might be sitting there saying to yourself, Rabbi, what are you talking about? This is now going too far. To feel grateful for life's challenges and hurts and pains and disappointments? Yes, and if not for that itself, for some silver lining within it. You can never be thankful that it happened and would hope and pray it never happens again. But you can see some good that came from it and then even be grateful for it. When I came across this idea as I was reading in the field of positive psychology, it felt very Jewish to me. In Hebrew we say, Gam zu la tova. We look at something that it's so difficult, but we say, also this is for the good. Also this is for the good. I understand little kids very clearly. He's saying, no, I want to hear the rest of the sermon. What are you doing? I want to hear how it ends. Don't take me out now. It's okay. Okay. He'll be comforted. You'll hear him stop crying because he'll be comforted to know that he can hear it on the speaker outside. So, he'll be okay. So, I just tell you that as I look at my own life, there were times that felt torturous at the time. And I do pray that they never return. And yet, they almost seem like they were laying the foundation for me to handle situations even years down the road. I'll never be grateful that it happened, but I am grateful for what I gained from it. Gamzu la tova. The field of positive psychology recommends that we talk about what we are grateful for. Otherwise, we take it for granted and don't take the good for granted. And we are blind to the good things that happen to us. Do not be blind to the good in our lives and only disappointed by the pain, because the pain will inevitably come, because for all of us, bad things sadly do happen. But you know what they talk about? Maybe some of you do this. They say at the end of the day, maybe when you're getting into bed, if you fall asleep as soon as you put your head on the pillow, maybe do it before you get into bed. Some people do it when they wake up in the morning. Just take a few moments. It doesn't take a lot of time to just reflect on, what do I feel grateful for today? And I bet you will think about something that otherwise you take for granted. So, let me take a moment now to invite you to do just this. Just take a moment. Maybe one thing will pop to mind, maybe three. Just think about right now some things that you feel really grateful for. And I can tell if you're doing this, because if you're really doing this, there will be a smile that comes to your face. Friends, I want to tell you that I am deeply grateful that we have the Deputy Consul General here with us today and the Deputy Chief of Security. I feel even safer being only three rows away from you. And I am deeply, deeply grateful that we have a Jewish state from whom we can have a representative be with us on this joyful and holy day. And I know that you all share my deep, deep, joyful sense of gratitude for our beloved state of Israel. This past Shabbat morning, someone told me how his son was on a recent birthright trip, and he could not stop telling me. He became more and more enthusiastic about how that 10 days in Israel changed his son's life. Being in Israel, being with kids his age who weren't in college. They're serving in Sahal. They're serving in the Israeli army. They got to know them. It changed his life. It changed his Jewish life. He'll never be the same after those 10 days in Israel. And now he's working on being one of the group leaders to be able to go back on another birthright trip so that he'll be there with other kids who can share the enthusiasm and the love that he gained during that time. I'm grateful that even with all of the horrible killing going on around her, I'm grateful that the Jewish state is still a land of peace and of love. It happens all around, but not in the state of Israel. And as the consul said, Israel has quietly, it's not to be publicized, but Israel has opened its northern border, and there's somehow a connection that has been made that when those near the border have been injured, and some might even come from some distance, they can come in within Israel. And there are a number of hospitals in the northern part of Israel, in Sfat, in other areas, that are taking these horribly wounded children and adults and performing surgery and healing them. And maybe the worst thing then is they have to go home, and God knows what happens after that. These people probably grew up being taught to hate the Zionists, but they will return to their country filled no longer with hatred, but a very different story to tell about us Jews, about Israelis, about those Zionists. And dear friends, I hope that we will express our gratitude, again I say this, for Israel in a most concrete way, an act even more important than a feeling in our investment at this sacred season in Israel bonds. Sadly, we find ourselves at those times when we wonder, why do bad things happen to good people? But I hope for you today, for each one of you, each day of this coming year, that you repeatedly focus on good things, on the good things that happen to you, and they do. You are that good person. There are so many good and great things in our lives for which we can feel grateful. And I hope this year for you, this new year will be filled with more and more. And so to you all I say, and to each one of you individually, Gemar Chatima Tova, may you be sealed for a good and a grateful new year. Amen.